Ma'am, routine check. Please put your bag here and step back.
Ma'am, there's something else here, a hidden compartment.
That's standard security for sensitive documents.
They ripped through her bag at the checkpoint, then froze when they noticed the hidden emblem. Colonel Sarah "Ghost" Mitchell thought returning to Fort Laram would be routine, just another consultation job for a woman the military had quietly erased from official records. But when checkpoint guards discovered the classified Night Eagle emblem hidden in her bag, they realized they weren't dealing with a forgotten veteran. They were facing the most dangerous pilot in Air Force history. And she was back for a reason that would shake the entire base to its core. The morning mist clung to the perimeter fence of Fort Laram. As Colonel Sarah Mitchell approached the main checkpoint, her worn leather duffel bag slung casually over her shoulder. At 42, she moved with the fluid precision of someone who'd spent 2 decades in cockpits where split-second decisions meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The guards at the checkpoint were young, probably hadn't even been born when Sarah was flying her first classified missions over hostile territory. They saw a woman in civilian clothes with graying temples and tired eyes, just another contractor or consultant making an early morning visit to the sprawling Air Force installation. "Ma'am, routine inspection," Airman Rodriguez said, gesturing toward the inspection table. "Please place your bag here and step back." Sarah complied without comment, watching as Rodriguez and his partner, Staff Sergeant Kim, began their methodical search. Her bag contained the usual items: laptop files, a change of clothes, toiletries. Nothing that would raise eyebrows or trigger security protocols, but hidden beneath a false bottom wrapped in black cloth and secured with a combination lock that hadn't been opened in 5 years was something that would change everything. Rodriguez's hands worked through the bag with practiced efficiency until his fingers found the hidden compartment. "Ma'am, there's something else in here, a hidden section." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but her pulse quickened. "Standard security precaution for sensitive documents." Kim joined his partner as they worked to access the compartment. When the false bottom finally gave way, both guards froze simultaneously. Nestled in the black cloth was a silver emblem, unlike anything in their training manuals, an eagle with wings spread wide, clutching a sword in its talons, with small diamonds embedded in its eyes that caught the morning light like stars. "Jesus!" Rodriguez whispered, his voice barely audible. The emblem bore no unit designation, no official markings that appeared in any Air Force regulation. But both guards had heard the stories, the whispered legends that circulated through military circles about pilots who flew missions that officially never happened, who carried emblems that didn't exist in any database. Staff Sergeant Kim reached for his radio, then hesitated. Protocol demanded that he report any unidentified military insignia, but something about the woman's calm demeanor and the way she watched them with patient understanding made him pause. "Ma'am," Kim said carefully, "I need to ask you about this emblem." Sarah met his gaze directly. "That's classified above your clearance level, Sergeant. I suggest you contact Colonel Harrison in Special Operations. Tell him Ghost is back." The name Ghost sent an electric shock through both guards. Every airman at Fort Laram had heard the stories, the pilot who'd flown missions so classified that her very existence was denied, who disappeared from official records after a mission went wrong in 2019. Most assumed the stories were just military folklore, the kind of legends that grew around classified operations. Staff Sergeant Kim's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his secure radio. "Control, this is Checkpoint Alpha. I need an immediate connection to Colonel Harrison's Special Operations. Priority Alpha. Checkpoint Alpha, state the nature of your emergency." Kim looked at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Tell him Ghost has returned to the nest." The silence on the radio lasted nearly 30 seconds before a different voice came through, older, carrying the authority of senior command. "Checkpoint Alpha, this is Colonel Harrison. Describe the individual in question." Kim studied Sarah as he spoke. "Female, approximately 40 years old, civilian clothes, carrying classified Night Eagle insignia." Another pause. Then, "Escort her to Building 7, Conference Room Delta. Full honors. And Sergeant, this conversation never happened." As they walked across the base, Sarah felt the weight of 5 years pressing down on her shoulders. Fort Laram looked the same gray buildings, the same sound of jet engines in the distance, the same sense of controlled urgency that defined military installations. But she was different. The woman who'd left this place in disgrace was not the same person returning with purpose. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said as they approached Building 7. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah nodded. "The stories about Night Eagle, are they true?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. "Airmen, there are operations that happen in the spaces between what's officially acknowledged and what's necessary for national security. Sometimes good people do difficult things so that others can sleep safely at night. And you were part of that." "I was the best part of that," Sarah replied without arrogance, simply stating a fact. "Until politics and bureaucracy decided that my kind of service was inconvenient." Colonel Harrison was waiting in Conference Room Delta, and Sarah was struck by how much he'd aged in 5 years. His hair had gone completely gray, and new lines around his eyes spoke of stress and difficult decisions. "Sarah," he said, standing as she entered, "I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again." "Hello, Tom. You look like hell." Harrison managed a tired smile. 5 years of cleaning up the mess you left behind will do that to a man." They sat across from each other at the conference table, two old soldiers who'd shared secrets that could never be spoken aloud. Harrison poured coffee from a thermos, his hand steady, despite the gravity of the moment. "Why are you here, Sarah? The official word is that you're dead. Ghost died in that Syrian operation, remember? Ghost died." Sarah agreed. "But Sarah Mitchell survived, and now I'm back because someone is trying to steal Night Eagle technology." Harrison's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "That's impossible. Night Eagle was terminated. All assets were destroyed or transferred to black sites." "Not all of them," Sarah said, pulling a tablet from her bag. The screen showed satellite imagery of a remote facility in Eastern Europe with what appeared to be aircraft that shouldn't exist. "Someone has been reverse engineering our stealth technology. They have prototypes, Tom, and they're planning to sell them to the highest bidder." Harrison studied the images, his expression growing darker with each frame. "How did you get this intelligence? Let's just say that being officially dead has its advantages. People talk around ghosts. What do you need from me?" Sarah leaned forward, her eyes carrying the intensity that had made her legendary among those who knew her true identity. "I need access to the Night Eagle hangar. I need my bird back, and I need you to trust me one more time." The Night Eagle hangar sat at the far end of Fort Laram, isolated from the main flight operations and surrounded by security measures that didn't appear on any base schematic. As Harrison led Sarah through multiple checkpoints, each requiring biometric scans and classified codes, she felt like she was traveling back in time to when her life had purpose and meaning. The program was officially terminated 6 months after your departure, Harrison explained as they walked through the final security door. But some of us believed it might be needed again someday. The hangar opened before them like a cathedral of advanced technology. In the center, covered by a tarp that looked like it hadn't been disturbed in years, sat the aircraft that had been Sarah's life for nearly a decade. The B-2 Spirit variant designated Night Eagle 1 was a masterpiece of stealth engineering, modified with systems that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible. "She's been waiting for you," Harrison said softly. Sarah approached the aircraft with reverence, her hands tracing the familiar lines of the fuselage. Every curve, every surface had been designed for one purpose: to penetrate enemy airspace undetected and complete missions that conventional aircraft couldn't attempt. "The modifications we made," Sarah said, running her fingers along what appeared to be standard wing surfaces, "are they still functional?" "Everything's been maintained. The adaptive camouflage, the electromagnetic pulse, shielding the quantum radar deflection system, all of it. We told the oversight committees it was for research purposes." Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at the base. "Tom, you magnificent bastard, you kept her operational." "I kept her ready," Harrison corrected, "because I knew that someday someone would try to steal what we'd built. And when that day came, we'd need the best pilot who ever flew to stop them." Over the next 6 hours, Sarah reacquainted herself with systems that had been cutting edge when she'd last flown them. The Night Eagle's capabilities went far beyond conventional stealth technology. It could literally bend light around its surfaces, making it invisible to both radar and visual detection. The quantum systems allowed it to exist in a state of technological uncertainty, appearing on sensors as everything from a flock of birds to atmospheric disturbance. "The intelligence you brought," Harrison said as Sarah ran through pre-flight diagnostics, "shows the stolen technology is being moved tonight. A convoy of trucks heading to a private airfield in Romania, where a transport plane will take it to buyers unknown." "Then we intercept," Sarah said simply. "Sarah, this isn't an official mission. If something goes wrong, if you're captured or killed, the U.S. government will deny any knowledge of your existence or this operation." "Tom, I've been dead for 5 years. What's the worst they can do? Kill me again." As evening approached, Sarah suited up in the specialized flight gear that had been designed specifically for Night Eagle operations. The suit integrated with the aircraft systems, allowing the pilot to interface directly with the stealth technology and quantum navigation systems. "There's something else," Harrison said as Sarah prepared for takeoff. "The intelligence suggests that the theft wasn't random. Someone with intimate knowledge of Night Eagle systems planned this operation. Someone who knew exactly what to steal and how to use it." Sarah paused in her pre-flight routine. "You're saying it's an inside job?" "I'm saying that whoever is behind this knows things that only a handful of people should know. People who were part of the original Night Eagle program." The implication hung in the air between them. Sarah's former teammates, the pilots and technicians who'd worked on the classified program, had all been reassigned or retired after her supposed death. Any one of them could have the knowledge necessary to steal and replicate the technology. "Do you have a list of suspects?" Harrison handed her a tablet with personnel files. "Everyone who had access to level 7 clearance or higher, 12 people, including you and me." Sarah scrolled through the files, seeing faces she'd once trusted with her life. The idea that one of them had betrayed everything they'd worked for was almost too painful to consider. "I'll find out who," she said, her voice carrying the cold determination that had made her legendary. "And when I do, they'll wish they'd never heard of Night Eagle." As Sarah climbed into the cockpit of Night Eagle 1, the familiar embrace of the pilot's seat felt like coming home. The aircraft systems came alive around her, responding to her touch like a living thing that had been waiting patiently for its master's return. "Ghost to control," she said into her headset, using the call sign that had struck fear into enemy forces across 3 continents. "Night Eagle 1 is ready for departure." "Copy, Ghost. You are cleared for takeoff, and Sarah, bring our bird home safe." "Roger that, Control. Ghost is going hunting." The night sky over Eastern Europe was a tapestry of stars, as Sarah guided Night Eagle 1 through airspace that officially didn't exist on any flight plan. The aircraft moved like a shadow, given form its quantum stealth systems, rendering it invisible to the sophisticated air defense networks that protected the region. "Ghost to Control," Sarah whispered into her headset. "I have visual on the convoy. 3 trucks heavy escort moving toward the airfield as predicted." "Copy, Ghost. What's your assessment?" Sarah studied the scene through Night Eagle's advanced optics. The convoy was heavily defended military vehicles, armed personnel, and what appeared to be surface-to-air missile systems positioned along the route. This wasn't a simple theft. It was a military operation. "Tom, this is bigger than we thought. I'm seeing professional military equipment coordinated defensive positions. Whoever is behind this has serious backing." "Can you intercept?" Sarah was about to respond when her threat detection systems screamed a warning. Multiple radar signatures had suddenly appeared on her screen's aircraft that hadn't been there moments before, rising from what appeared to be empty countryside. "Control, I have multiple bogies. They're using some kind of stealth technology." Sarah's voice cut off as she realized the horrifying truth. "Tom, they're flying Night Eagles." The silence on the radio was deafening. Harrison's voice, when it came, was tight with disbelief. "That's impossible. There's only one Night Eagle, and you're flying it." "Then someone's been very busy building copies," Sarah replied, throwing her aircraft into evasive maneuvers as the enemy planes closed in. "I count 4 aircraft, all using our stealth signatures, all armed with weapons that look suspiciously like our own." The aerial battle that followed was unlike anything in military history. 5 invisible aircraft dancing through the night sky, their only traces the occasional flicker of exhaust or the brief flash of weapons fire. Sarah's years of experience gave her an edge, but she was outnumbered and facing pilots who clearly knew Night Eagle capabilities intimately. "Ghost, you need to abort." Harrison's voice crackled through the radio. "This is a trap. They knew you were coming." "No," Sarah replied, her voice deadly calm as she executed a maneuver that should have been impossible. "This is exactly what I came for." She dove toward the convoy, using the terrain to mask her approach while the enemy aircraft struggled to maintain pursuit. Her target wasn't the trucks, it was the airfield, where a massive transport plane waited to carry the stolen technology to its buyers. If I can destroy the transport, the technology stays here, she muttered to herself, lining up for an attack run that would require her to fly directly through the enemy's defensive fire. That's when her worst fears were confirmed. A voice came through her radio. A voice she recognized, a voice that belonged to someone she'd once trusted with her life. "Hello, Sarah. I was wondering when you'd show up." Captain Marcus Webb, her former wingman and closest friend in the Night Eagle program, was flying one of the enemy aircraft. The man who'd saved her life on 3 separate missions, who'd been like a brother to her, was now hunting her through the night sky. "Marcus," Sarah said, her voice heavy with betrayal and pain. "Why? Because they threw us away, Sarah. After you died, they disbanded the program, scattered us to desk jobs and training commands. All that work, all that sacrifice, and for what? So politicians could pretend we never existed. So you decided to sell our secrets to the highest bidder. I decided to make sure our work meant something. The technology we developed could change the balance of power, could prevent wars instead of just fighting them, but only if it's in the right hands." Sarah felt her heart breaking as she realized the scope of Marcus's betrayal. "And you think foreign buyers are the right hands? I think anyone is better than the bureaucrats who buried us." The conversation was interrupted by missile lock warnings as the other enemy aircraft closed in. Sarah found herself surrounded, outgunned, and facing the impossible choice between completing her mission and surviving the encounter. "Marcus, please, don't do this. We can find another way." "There is no other way, Sarah. You're either with us or you're in our way." The missile launch warning screamed through her cockpit as Sarah realized that her former friend was prepared to kill her to protect his conspiracy. The woman who'd been officially dead for 5 years was about to become actually dead unless she could pull off the most impossible maneuver of her legendary career. Sarah's hands moved across Night Eagle's controls with the fluid precision of someone who'd spent thousands of hours mastering impossible maneuvers. As Marcus's missile streaked toward her through the darkness, she activated systems that pushed the aircraft beyond its theoretical limits. "Quantum displacement full power," she whispered, engaging the most classified capability of the Night Eagle program. For a split second, Night Eagle 1 existed in multiple probability states, simultaneously appearing on radar as a flock of birds, a weather balloon, and empty air, all at once. The missile, confused by contradictory sensor data, detonated harmlessly in space where Sarah's aircraft had been, but no longer was. "Impossible!" Marcus's voice crackled through the radio. "That system was never fully operational." "You always underestimated what I could do with broken toys," Sarah replied, using the momentary confusion to break free from the enemy formation. Below, the convoy had reached the airfield, and Sarah could see the massive transport plane beginning its takeoff sequence. If it escaped with the stolen Night Eagle technology, the balance of global power would shift overnight. Hostile nations would have access to stealth capabilities that had taken decades and billions of dollars to develop. "Control, I need options," Sarah called to Harrison. 4 enemy aircraft, all Night Eagle variants, and a transport that's about to take off with our most classified technology. "Ghost, you're outnumbered 4-1. Even you can't—" "Watch me." Sarah dove toward the airfield, using the transport plane's massive bulk to shield her from the pursuing aircraft. Her plan was desperate: use Night Eagle's electromagnetic pulse capability to disable the transport systems, forcing it to abort takeoff and keeping the technology on the ground. But Marcus had anticipated her move. "Sarah, if you EMP that plane, you'll crash it with everyone aboard. That's not the woman I knew." "The woman you knew died 5 years ago," Sarah replied, but her finger hesitated over the EMP trigger. Marcus was right. Using the electromagnetic pulse would disable the transport, but it would also send it crashing into the airfield with potentially dozens of casualties. "There has to be another way," she muttered, scanning her options as the enemy aircraft closed in. That's when she noticed something that changed everything. The transport plane wasn't just carrying stolen technology, it was carrying people. Through Night Eagle's advanced optics, she could see figures moving inside the aircraft's cargo bay. Not just the thieves and their buyers, but what appeared to be hostages. "Marcus," she called over the radio, "there are civilians on that plane." "Collateral damage," Marcus replied coldly. "The technology is more important than a few lives." The callousness in his voice, the casual dismissal of innocent lives, reminded Sarah why she'd become Ghost in the first place. Not for the thrill of flying impossible missions, but to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. "Then you're not the man I thought you were," she said, making a decision that would define the rest of her life. Instead of attacking the transport, Sarah turned Night Eagle 1 toward the enemy aircraft. If she couldn't stop the plane from taking off, she could at least ensure that the stolen technology wouldn't reach its destination. "Ghost to control," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "I'm going to need you to clear all airspace within 50 miles of my position." "Sarah, what are you planning?" Something that officially never happened. Sarah activated Night Eagle's most experimental system, the quantum entanglement drive that existed only in theoretical papers and classified research notes. The system had never been tested in combat, had never been proven safe for human pilots, but it offered capabilities that defied conventional physics. "Marcus," she called over the radio, "last chance. Call off your people and let the hostages go." "You're bluffing, Sarah. You won't risk destroying yourself just to stop us." "You're right," Sarah said, her voice carrying a smile that Marcus couldn't see. "I won't risk destroying myself, but I will risk everything to save innocent lives." She engaged the quantum drive. Night Eagle 1 suddenly existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously, its quantum signature spreading across space-time like ripples in a pond. The enemy aircraft, trying to target something that was everywhere and nowhere at once, found their weapon systems unable to lock onto a target that existed in probability rather than reality. Sarah used the quantum state to position herself directly above the transport plane, matching its speed and altitude with impossible precision. Then, in a maneuver that would be talked about in classified circles for decades, she used Night Eagle's gravitational manipulation systems to create a localized field that forced the transport to land without damaging it or harming the people aboard. "Impossible," Marcus breathed as he watched the massive transport settle onto the runway as gently as a feather. "Marcus," Sarah said, her aircraft now visible again as she disengaged the quantum systems, "the only impossible thing here is that you thought you could outsmart Ghost." The enemy aircraft, realizing their mission had failed, attempted to escape. But Sarah wasn't finished. Using Night Eagle's advanced tracking systems, she painted each aircraft with targeting lasers that would allow friendly forces to track them anywhere in the world. "Control, I have 4 bogies marked for tracking. They're yours now." "Copy, Ghost." NATO forces are already scrambling to intercept. As Sarah watched the enemy aircraft disappear into the night, she felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She'd stopped the theft of Night Eagle technology and saved the hostages, but she'd also lost a friend who'd chosen greed over honor. "Ghost to control," she said, as she turned Night Eagle 1 toward home. "Mission accomplished. The technology is secure, the hostages are safe, and the bad guys are running scared." "Outstanding work, Ghost. Welcome back to the land of the living." Sarah smiled as she guided her aircraft through the night sky, feeling truly alive for the first time in 5 years. Ghost was back, and the world was a safer place because of it. 6 months later, Colonel Sarah "Ghost" Mitchell stood in the Pentagon briefing room, no longer a woman who officially didn't exist. The Night Eagle program had been reactivated with full congressional approval, and Sarah had been promoted to lead the new generation of pilots who would carry on the mission. The stolen technology had been recovered, and the international conspiracy behind the theft had been exposed. Marcus Webb and his co-conspirators were serving life sentences in military prison, their betrayal a cautionary tale about the price of selling out one's country. But perhaps more importantly, the hostages Sarah had saved included Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist whose research into quantum propulsion would revolutionize aerospace technology for decades to come. Her rescue had prevented not just the theft of existing technology, but the loss of future innovations that would keep America at the forefront of aviation development. "The new Night Eagle squadron will be operational within the year," Sarah told the assembled generals and defense officials. "We've learned from the mistakes of the past, and we've built safeguards to ensure that our technology never again falls into the wrong hands." General Morrison, the Air Force Chief of Staff, nodded approvingly. "And you'll be leading this squadron personally." "Yes, sir. Ghost Squadron will be the most elite unit in the Air Force, with pilots selected not just for their flying skills, but for their character and loyalty." After the briefing, Sarah walked through the Pentagon corridors, past portraits of military heroes and displays of historic aircraft. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a disgraced pilot, presumed dead, to the leader of the most advanced aviation program in the world. Her phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. "Saw the news coverage. The president is calling you a national hero. How does it feel to be famous?" Sarah smiled as she typed her reply. "Fame is overrated. I prefer being a ghost." That evening, Sarah returned to Fort Laram, where Night Eagle 1 waited in its hangar. She ran her hand along the aircraft's sleek surface, feeling the bond between pilot and machine that had carried them through impossible missions. "Ready for another adventure, old girl," she whispered. The aircraft seemed to hum in response, its systems coming alive at her touch. Sarah Mitchell was no longer dead to the world, but Ghost would always be ready to disappear into the shadows when duty called. Some legends, she reflected, were too important to stay buried.